Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. An absolute pleasure to be able to speak to you. Maybe for people who don't know anything about Murina, you can give us a little glimpse. What can they expect if they watch your film?
That's always the hardest questions for directors. Once you finish the shoot, you separate yourself from the pitches. But yes, Murina is a coming-of-age story, but not a very common one, because I would say it's more coming of age for the adults in the movie than the teenager. And you can expect thriller, emotional turbulence, fight for life, and hopefully be reminded of resilience you have once had or still have as a teenager.
Mm. And it feels like a very original story. And I don't know how much of it was born out of, personal experiences of yours. I know you're born in Dubrovnik. So what was the initial inspiration, and why did you land on this specific story for your feature debut?
I worked with Gracija Filipović, my actress, on my short film Into the Blue that was set on this island near Dubrovnik. It's an island where I spent years as a child with my grandmother and my great-grandmother. And we were completely like set free, kids running in the nature, conflict of, hormones and this dangerous nature outside of us. And it was very exciting inspiration for my first film. And once doing that a short film, I met Gracija better, and I understood that I really want to write a feature script for her, because I wanted to capture her in this delicate moment in 16, 17, just becoming a young woman. So Murina was birthed from these first images of Into the Blue, being on an isolated island, and then knowing Gracija from that film and knowing that, resilience and the passion, and recognizing some of that in myself at that age. The story is not a personal story, but I've known that isolation, living in Croatia, living in a small town, also spending a lot of time on island. But what is also very close to me, and even more than I've known before I started making the movie, is this mentality, Croatian mentality, that is actually, it's disguised under the terminology of mentality. It's really chauvinism and violence. And that's something that it's an everyday, it's just like the part of the life, it's like, it's a violence that's, you can drink up so easily because it's everywhere around you in the street. When people ask me who are these characters, it's very easy to answer because they are everywhere, like on your way to the taxi, into the store, passing on the streets, telling to one, what do you know, why you're even speaking, what do you have to say? Also, in my own industry, people saying, where did you come from all of a sudden? Why are you directing? How can you, we haven't seen you before. Like, we haven't approved it. It's that, it's a mentality that is very persistent in Balkans.
Mm. And I'm really interested in kind of how, like, the look and feel of the film, because I think you mentioned kind of thriller there at the beginning, and it's kind of like, what can seem, coming of age film, but also family drama, but does have that kind of feeling of suspense that just kind of keeps you hooked just for every minute of the film. So I wonder what kind of you were thinking about in terms of the way you shot it and the way you presented it. It feels like, even in sort of what is an everyday moment, they're going around, setting up the house ready for a party or going fishing. There feels like a threat in the air. And so would you have to just talk us through kind of the way you put the film together?
But that is exactly that threat, and that underlying danger comes from nature of people, you know. It comes from the violence, that you are always walking on the eggshells. You never know from which moment the real conflict can erupt. Like, everything can trigger a conflict, everything can trigger violence. And I think that the way the story escalates, it's also set in this, I was purposefully looking for location without any trees, and no shade, no way to hide. So the characters are really exposed on these rocks, you know, like kind of burning in their desire and conflict and impulses. There's nothing, there's no space to calm that down. So it really goes from the, you know, small movements of discomfort to rolls up to this real thriller fight for life. But it all comes from the character, I think. And yeah, that was exciting to me, how to build it all from psychology, the danger and tension.
And it also feels like you have an interest kind of in the physical form. Like, you know, Julia, you know, is often just in a swimsuit. You know, we're often in the bathroom or in the bedroom when her mom is changing. And it kind of maybe feeds into a little bit of that kind of vulnerability somehow. But then within the safe space, when it's women only, you know, that feels more relaxed. But then, you know, when she's outside amongst the men, you know, saying, oh, your daughter's, you know, a tease because she's, you know, not covering herself up. So I thought, was there something interesting in the way you were looking at the female form as well?
But I think that there's no discomfort for someone who grows up on an island at the beach, fishing, and, you know, on their terrace in that heat. That is your normal, you know, natural habitat. You don't feel discomfort at it. What is discomforting is under the gaze of foreigners, how the men that usually understood it as normal perceive it differently now. It's their own unease with it, their own discomfort. It's not a discomfort of a female body of a young girl, because she's very comfortable in her skin. And that's something that I was interested in. She's not aware of sensuality. She just is. She does not entirely perceive her body as sexual or any type of a tool.
And can you tell us about the shoot itself? Because it looks like, as you were mentioning, the location was so crucial. But, you know, there's so many scenes that look like they must have been hard to shoot, you know, the diving scenes, lots of moments when they're in the water. So can you tell us a bit the challenges and the highlights of the actual shoot?
Yeah, this was a very complex film to access, first of all, location-wise. You know, all the underwaters we shot on exterior location of the island that actually my grandmother advised. We were looking to almost like build this underwater location in a pool for safety and everything. She's like, no, nothing can be safer than this, and it's so real, you know, and you can have the crew outside. Yes, it takes you 30 minutes to get there by the boat, and there's no other access, but it's very safe when you're there. And strangely enough, I wanted to just check it out of curiosity, and she was right. That's where we shot all the underwater scenes, and that's where we shot all the scenes from the tunnel and from the cave, because that location was somehow perfect. It allowed us, you know, it was a 40-meter deep, so it gave enough of the blue haze for the backgrounds that we could, you know, build upon it also with CGI, and it gave us enough of the like very like stark nature and reality. So yeah, that was perfect. That saved us money and maybe added a little bit of stress. But the house was like 15-20 minute hike every morning to the house and back. There was no road, so it was really complicated also to bring electricity to the house, because of this distance, and equipment, and I mean the entire crew every day. Was not an easy task, but it was worth it because it was the only house that's from 14th century on the coast, that it's in such a small bay that has no vegetation around, because there's no pine trees, there's no lush nature. It's only olives that are kind of gray and same as stone. So that was very important for me. And the last location, Kornati, it's a national park all the way up north in Croatia. It's completely deserted. It's 3 hours from the coast drive with a boat. And it was, that location is fascinating there. Just, it's bare rocks and the sea and the wind and the sun. And it's like, it really feels like a moon. It does not feel that it's from this earth. And I think that location was a very important visual of the film. And it really describes this, body is like flesh burning on the plate, So yeah, that was fascinating experience, because people behind the camera were also like those in front. we didn't have a tree only for us.
And what about your cast? Because obviously you're already talking about Gracia there, who's just phenomenal and got such an interesting, I think, presence on the screen. Kind of, very little dialogue actually, but conveys so much of kind of this, resilience and this strength, which we of course see like awakened as we go through the film. So let's talk about working with her. I mean, she must have also been a really strong swimmer. I don't know like what training she had to do to film this, but her and also the rest of the cast as well, because it's so intense, the scenes they do.
I first time cast Gracia because she is a professional swimmer. She did it for 10 years, and the notes for her very often were swim less good, please. Because it really
sail around a bit.
Yeah, it looked like sometimes it looked like, like ads, like synchronized swimming ads, or La Mer or something. And I really had to make it like more relatable, because like it's very hard to relate to such a perfection, the way she was. So that's one thing. But yes, I mean, I built Murina for her. I wrote the script for her. And then I did a casting around her. I went through a period where I was adjusting, Gracia to the roles that are not per se herself. And then she went through some, physical preparations. We went diving and we lived together on the island together and with the other actors, only two of us. And then once others joined as well. And I traveled with her a little bit, and we took tango, for this relationship of following and being in the scene with another person and trust. And then I started casting people around her. So I first cast the father, and then once I was sure that he is the person to be Ante, we cast together the mother, and then we cast Javier. So we were kind of building up this family, making sure that all the pieces click in support of Gracia, because that was really important, that these actors, of course, they're embodying these characters, but they're mostly first there to support her character. And that was important for me that was important element, collaborative element when choosing an actor.
And what do you hope that people take away from watching it? Because it is so engrossing. But there are, of course, those of themes that kind of come out of it, like you were mentioning, like sort of that patriarchal society that she's within. But she almost seems to have maybe accepted her lot in life. But then, of course, when this foreigner comes, all that world seems to have been blown open, and she sort of starts to realize her own strength. So there's something quite kind of empowering or inspirational, but it's also a lot of things to sort of feel quite despairing about, because how much of that kind of chauvinistic attitude does linger on, and not even in communities like that, but in kind of, mainstream societies all throughout the world. So yeah, what do you think?
No, it's fascinating. I notice on myself, I didn't know I'm in a need, to loudly say I'm a feminist, because raised in Croatia, before I moved to live in New York, I was, of course, living under different currents. And before making this movie, I didn't know that I'm really a feminist in such an extent, because in Croatia, it's almost marketed as something really bad, like, oh, I hope you're not a feminist. No, that's something that I hear mostly from women also. And it's just a lack of education. It's a lack of understanding. It's a lack of disguising things, undisguising, I mean. And it's also lack of, it's a very perfect branding, that it's made of bad feminism and unfortunate mentality. And what can you do? Mm-hmm. That's how we are. That's how it's lived here. That's how we need to accept it. But it's not true, And I saw it in a new generation, because these younger women, like 16-year-old women and 17-year-old women, in some ways they're, of course, very locked in this mentality. But then they have these other things that I don't know where they came from, exactly how they managed to penetrate to Croatia, but are very open. And I recognized that in Gracija, and that was very surprising to me. And I would say that certain aspects of her own feminism have changed me as well at 35. Mm. So that was a great experience. I think I've discovered that I am truly a feminist very late in life.
Mm. Well, I think it was really interesting what you said there about, like, even it comes from women, because obviously there's so many scenes that are hard to watch, particularly between, her and her father. But is it almost feel even more uncomfortable when it's her mother who's kind of joining in on the act, because you kind of want to think, women stick together or something like that. But it seems that she's internalized the same kind of thought process as the father.
Yes, because it comes from the mentality and branding, that action mentality, but like forced. It's a forced concept that man is an award, and then when you feel that man is an award, in that mentality, somehow the other woman is in a threat to a woman. Women are a threat to a woman when man is conceived as conceptualized as an award. And I think that once that women understand that men are not an award or not necessary for their survival, other women are not threats to you. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the themes in Murina, but also that mother, she's the most interesting character to me. She has like really the biggest arc. She's raised in one mentality, and she's now confronted with another woman that she raised that's from other mentality, and she's kind of in between. She cannot be totally from the old world, but she cannot really go to the new world, because she is in a transition. As society is hopefully transitioning, she's the link in between two different transitions, and she understands how in her time she cannot fully assume the mentality of her daughter because her life hasn't been built that way. So there's a wisdom to her and tragedy. And it's hard for a 16-year-old daughter to sometimes understand that, because for her, world is open and full of possibilities, and everything is just starting and nothing is lost. And there's no remorse, grief, or investment. So it's very difficult for that mother, I think.
Mm-hmm. And well, I think I've gone over my time, but can you quickly tell us, if you've already got another film after this in mind that, might do for your second feature, but also I feel like films like this, which are very much through the female gaze and kind of, really capturing something about the female experience, particularly coming of age, whether you feel like there's, more and more appetite and more opportunity to tell stories like this, or, we still have a way to go to kind of have more of these opportunities.
I think that exactly off of this answer, from this conflict and difficult situation between mother and daughter that are coming from a different mentalities and different eras almost, comes my next feature film, where the man and the antagonism of the world is no longer from something exterior of these women, isolation of an island, oppression of a marriage, violence of the father, or, an ability to leave and escape. But it's more internalized. And now I'm looking for what are these things that are blocking these women when we remove all the exterior out of them, antagonism.
And in terms of, opportunities for female filmmakers and telling kind of female-led stories?
We are in the right time. Very fortunate to be in. I'm very fortunate to be born exactly in this time and starting my career in this time. The time is now. And there are threats that this is going to be a trend that lasts 2, 3, 4 years. I don't believe that. I think this is not a trend. I think this is something that has opened and this is the new reality. We are fighting for the same type of investments as any other directors so far. So we should stick around.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me. And I can't wait for everyone else to see this incredible and intoxicating and engrossing film. So
thank you so much.
Thanks so much for talking to me.
Pleasure.